probably come over here too. I'm not sure if you can. Let's see. Yeah, you can. So you can go in and adjust some of them on top of the adjustment that's already there. Angle jitter. So there, I can get a little jittery line. So, you know, I can go in and tweak these too if I want. Does that make sense? Now, some of them I'm not sure if you can, but as far as I, so here's the transfer thing. Okay, so the transfer thing doesn't look like it's actually applying as much. And then these, I could probably come in here. Yeah. So if you notice now, I just put in the color dynamics, and what that does is it, in black and white, it's varying my value. Okay. So again, if I'm using this brush, that might come in really handy if I'm doing a ground texture or something. See that? Does that make sense? Yeah. And then if I go to a color, it should do the same thing. Yeah. See how it varies that? That's really nice. And then if I go here, let's go. I don't want that. Let's go here. I'm going to go to scattering and scatter it out a little bit. And that gives me some really nice stuff. That's really nice ground texture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That then I would go back into and go, you know, I want to manage the edges. So the thing I'm trying to avoid all the time is sameness. There's not a lot of sameness in this. It's actually pretty good. Oops. So I'd find some. Go ahead.
In your drawing process, would you go through and use like your favorite pen to kind of like block it in? Like if we were talking about the Oliver sin, kind of blocks it in, then he comes back with
it always starts with, well, yeah, it mostly always starts with the drawing.
So you do like a light, kind of just like where everything is, compositional drawing, and then come back and then do textures like this.
Well, I'm gonna next week we're gonna start talking about color, and I'm gonna go down that process rabbit hole too. Okay.
Okay.
But everything's going to now here's the other thing, and I do this with paint, I do this in Photoshop, where I might start something like if it's a landscape. Next week we'll do a landscape. We'll do a more advanced sort of illustrative view that I just give you a black and white to start with. Both of them I'll give you something to start with, and then sort of comic book color, and I'm kind of covering the gamut of sort of how I do things. Okay. I like to start, if I can, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't think that I have one. I mean, I tend to do a grisaille underpainting or drawing or something, but sometimes I don't. I mean, and again, this is what influences the way I teach. I think you should have a variety of technique. I think that's a good thing to do. Again, now I could take something like this, you know, then I might go, well, I don't want it, you know, it's going to be a ground texture or something. And they might come in here and dial in more of a ground texture-y idea, get it a little more dirty, and then come in here. And now this one's making a very specific mark, which is fine. Like I might start to carve this and go, well, maybe this here is a down-facing plane. And I'll just start angling these things out. Does that make sense? And then now it's going, so it's doing this. Does that make sense? And I'll start, you know, working my brush marks that way. And then I'll have to come back in here and go, well, now I'm losing the color. So I might have to come back in here, back to that brush. Now I probably lost that brush because I left it. Yeah, I did. But that's all right. Now it's giving me a different texture, which is kind of nice. And see that variation that the color dynamics gave me? It's nice. Okay. And then I just want to come in. See, I like to go in and go, this is just my thing, right? I like to come in and go super random and then focus it in. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll show you a lot of techniques to generate things like this. Okay. Or just things like landscape. using all these different tools, right? And I don't really consider those any different than painting, to be honest with you, okay? Because a lot of times with painting, I'll go, hey, I got this old ratty brush, and there's a big hillside back there and maybe some random stuff in the foreground. I might take that big ratty brush and just do the same thing I just did here, you know, with paint, and then go, okay, that looks kind of like that hill. And then I'll just take that and scrub in the foreground. And I'm just creating that soup for me to start to focus in on, okay? That's how I tend to work here too, okay? Does that make sense? So anyway, this could be this, you know, and then I'd have to come in here and go, okay, I need to mix up the edges and things. So maybe I'll come, let's see what this does. I don't even know what this does. See, that's kind of nice. So I can come in here and start to go, where am I going to change up these edges? Maybe this one gets pulled out a little bit and I can start to indicate, I don't like that. I can start to indicate some grassy stuff coming through here, you know, and I'll just start building it. Does that make sense? And I go, okay, this is a little, this needs another dose of, let's try this.
So it looks like you can change your mixed media techniques. So you can maybe have it start off looking kind of like pastels, and then now it looks almost like dry brush.
I'm always going to use, I'm always going to use a mixture of techniques, dry brush, wet into wet. Like if I want to get a wet into wet thing here, then I can come up here and go here. Oh, wait a minute. Wrong one. Oh, this is a watercolor spatter. I don't know if I've ever used that. See, that's nice too. I like that. Look at that. That's kind of cool. So I might use that on an edge. But what I was going to say is I could come up here and then go, you know, and get like a real watery wash there. Now I can pull back this strength on it. Let's see if we can do that. Pull it way down, see what happens.
What is strength?
Just how much of it you get. See how it's not as much now? So look, see how I'm kind of working it and it's just slowly changing the edges. If I go to 100%, that's at 1%. If I go to 100, it obliterates it. Okay. And you're going to get those same controls all over the place. So, you know, I might go, this is kind of nice there, maybe. So, and I'm going to talk a lot about this next week. I don't expect everybody to get hard and soft edges and all these ideas in one fell swoop. Trying to introduce you to it, show you how it works with these tools. The watercolor thing, as opposed to oil, is, so this to me feels a little more oily. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Now, part of the reason for that is oil brushes, you start them off washy and loose, but they still, even when you put down an oil wash sort of like that, it has this sort of, even though it's not opaque, it sort of has this, God, I don't know how to explain it. Well, let's go thicker. So if I go thicker, let's see what this is. Yeah, like that. So what you're doing with oils, you're starting to build up texture, thickness. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you can see here, it's sort of getting the idea of a brush mark running through your mark. Does that make sense?
Yes. Uh-huh. Okay,
when I'm doing like that, right? And again, 90% of the time, I got to go in and I got to futz with these because otherwise it's going to look too uniform. It's not going to be believable. Okay, I got to worry about the edges and all that. But and then if I go here, because I gave you guys this, I know I gave you guys this. What was the one I just said I had to give you? Oh, Rakowski. Okay. If I go here to this Rusty Nib collection, which by the way, I don't need two of these. Why do I have two of these? Tonal wash, 40, 60, 80, this one. So if I go in here with this, I'm never going to, so that's reacting a little bit. I'm never going to opaque. I'm never going to where it's holding my brush marks. Okay. It's just going to be a wash. Okay. And then if I want to push that even further and break, let's say I want it to look wet into wet, then I might come up here and again go to just add water and break up an edge, or so I can start to get a wet into wet look. That's pretty soppy, but I might come in here and go, and again, I can pull back the strength. I should be able to pull that back. Yeah, see, and I can control that a little more. Or I can come up here, go back to my smudge brushes and go hard dapple. And that'll give me that nice sort of wet into wet watercolor washy kind of thing. And again, I can dial it down. That's at 97%. And I can start to get these really nice watercolory effects. Does that make sense? Now, the reason I'm going over and harping on and on about this, because we're talking about brushes, look at all the variety of media exploration we can get, okay, with the things that we have to work with now. Okay, so I could keep breaking this up, get a nice watercolor thing. And again, I can start this, could be a ground texture, could be a, hang on, let's try this. I could even start, let's try this. And let's go, let's do this. Let's get rid of that. Let's make a new layer. You know, and I could start, maybe it's a tree at an angle or something. And then I'm going to go, let's do this. Let's go. Let's vary the temperature and value a little bit. Come on. There it goes. Sorry, it's just working slow. And I'd probably come over here and vary the color over here a little bit. Maybe light it up a little. It's too much. I'm going to go lighter. Hang on. My computer will cooperate.
Hey, Mike, would you suggest like maybe drawing like 10 different tree trunks, like just simple Christmas trees,
yeah.
And then try out, okay, this is how this brush would make this, like the stumpy part look, or this is how it would make evergreen branches look going down, or swirly patterns, and just so you can kind of line up and see. Because
yeah, what I like to do, which I think is helpful, is to come in here and kind of do this, where you're going, okay, I'm trying to create sort of a interesting, and I'm also, if you notice, I'm not being very careful. I don't want to be careful here. And there's a, you know, and I could start to create just sort of a texture. And I would put more time into the lighting. And I can do that later. And I might come in here maybe and get, let's see if I can assign a more interesting, I think there's one in here. Let's see what this does. There's one in here that said, and I don't think I've ever used it. Where is it? There's one in here that said it was an eraser. Oh, here it is. Let's see what this does. I don't know what it does. What I'm looking for is something erases with, with a little bit of texture. And I'd probably come in here and shape this tree out a little bit with that. I'd leave some of this stuff bumpy a little bit. I might come in here with another brush and pull out some branches. I'd probably reshape this branch a little bit. Maybe come back in here with my brush, thin it down. You know, and I'd start shaping that out a little bit. I might do it with a brush. I'm trying to do it quick here. Let's see if I can do this one again. Yeah. And it might just be my start of something like this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Casey?
Yes, sir.
And then I might go to here. Let's see if we can do this. Let's go up to back to our group brushes and see what we got here. I don't like that. No, I don't like that. What I'm looking for something here is something very textural. Let's go back up here. And I should rename these brushes and make it easier, but sometimes I actually kind of like just screwing around with them. That's interesting. And again, it's an experiment. I don't know what I'm doing.
Mike, when you say you don't like it, what exactly don't you like? Is it
It might be
too?
it could be anything. It could be the design. It could be the value. Now I just switched back. I just did all this with a mouse, okay? And I just switched back to my brush. So I see I can get a little bit of like, I can control that texture a little bit.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm starting to get a little bit of nice texture in here. Now let's see if we can do this. So now I'm gonna go, let's try this. Nah. I don't like that. Maybe over here though. I want to go back to my eraser for a second. I want to carve that a little. That's a little better. And then a little here. And then we go back to my brush. See if I can get a little of that. Now let's try this because we talked about this yesterday. Where am I at? And then that mark, to your point, Issei, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
This one I don't really like the edge, so I'm going to change that edge a little. There. Yeah, more like that. That's a little nicer. Then maybe if I go, this is an environment. Let's go. Are you guys with me here? You want me to keep going?
I do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so
enjoying
let's
this.
go. Let's just go out here. I got another thing back here. Maybe see if I can pull in a. And I can adjust this, so I'm not going to worry about it. Come on. What are you doing?
Now, would you do this all on one layer?
No, I'm doing it on multiple layers.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times I put down, things like this, and I got to dial it in. That's so, this I'd have to dial in from a color perspective. It's too saturated. Which I don't mind it that saturated. Maybe, start to throw it into the background more. Does that make sense? And then the only reason I'm doing that is then I could come in here. Well, it's not the only reason I'm doing it. Let's go. Let's just keep going here. Let's go. So it'll usually dial back into here. I'm going to grab this. And some of this is going to start to get warmed up as it comes towards me. Okay. But, I usually like to cover it. And then I can start maybe even with this and, change this up. That's too dark. But I change this up. I probably get to a lighter value somewhere in between the two and still keep a little cool in there, so on and so forth. Right now, this is also a place where I might go, well, can I come in here with a brush, take this, move it into here, and then go, well, what if I take this? See, now it's starting to diffuse it a little bit and sort of mix it with the color around it so I can mix the color like I do paint. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And which is a really nice thing to be able to do. Okay. Because I don't want to sit here and I don't like really sitting here and figuring out all the color. How do I, pick this color when I can go in here and I can just, and I wouldn't leave it this sloppy at all. Okay. I'm going to pull some of that in there. And I'd have to adjust that because it needs to sit more behind the tree. But if I take the tree now, let's say that this has got, does that make sense right there? I don't need to finish that out, right? Casey?
Atmospheric
Yes, it makes
perspective.
sense.
Okay. So I'd have to dial that in. Wait a minute. I'm doing something real quick here. What happened? Man, my brush got super small for some reason. Oops.
I'm sorry, Mike, could you just explain it once again?
Explain what?
The brown blurry stuff?
I'll start to, what happens when you look out into the horizon, there's mountains back there. They'll get really cool. And then as it rolls towards you, it'll start to warm up a little bit. So
Oh, okay.
all I'm talking about right now is how as I dial it in. That's not nearly dialed in yet. It'd have to get much more desaturated, all that stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like, since you have it on a different layer, you could play with, you know,
Yeah, this one
changing
I
it.
don't have, wait, do I have it on a different layer? Oh, I do. I didn't realize I did. Yeah, so I could just go, I mean, there's a bunch of things I can do here. I could start to pull it back. And I could even do that and go, well, that's starting to work. And then I'll fill it back in here. All this stuff I'm just blocking. Does that make sense, Casey?
Yes.
Or I could go, you know, I could just start coming in here and going, well, that's too saturated. So I'm going to go to my here and I'm going to start desaturating a little bit and lightening it up. And that's a little better. Now I'd have to fix this horizon. It's not right yet, obviously. And I'm just blocking. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And the point being, and now I'd have to come back here because okay, so what I'm doing is I threw this in here, this tree, but then I go, okay, but what's the surrounding color? Okay, so is it a nice blue sky? That's too desaturated. So I'm going to saturate it up a little bit. Again, I can always adjust it. Yeah, there we go. I don't like that. So let's go. And I'd have to fill these spots in. Let's go to a warmer idea. And again, I can dial it in. Oops. Way too bright. Actually, it should go the other way. Way too bright. But, and then I could start to think about this tree in a different way where I can go. Now this I got on its own layer. Where's my eraser? There it is. Where I could start to dial this in, but I might start coming in here and going, can I get, and I want this on another layer. It's got to get smaller. Can I start dancing some of this blue in here? That's too much, but I'll knock it down. Might be green. Maybe there's a lot of green in this environment. Okay. And then I could come out here and start to go, well, maybe, let's try a different brush. Just get a different texture. Let's go. Let's see what this does. That's not bad. Maybe I'll pick up some of this. Start to light this side. I'll vary my brush size a little. And then again, I got to mix up these edges a little bit. I don't want anything to look like it's just repeating. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then I'm starting to like that a little bit. So I'm gonna go back to the brush. I'm gonna grab this, maybe go a little darker. Start to knock some of that in there because it's turning away from the form. I can kind of imply a core a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now I'm going to drop a little of this, more of this in here. No, I don't like that. Hang on. A little more of this. A little saturated, but I'm going to knock it down again. And usually I'd have that on its own layer so I could kind of play with it. I don't want too much of that. You know, then I'd have to come back here. Where is that? There it is. I don't know why I have two. I'm going to mix these two. Wait, no, that's on there. Okay. So then I could probably come up here and I'd go, well, what am I going to do with, I'm on the wrong layer. What am I going to do with this edge? And I'd break up some of that, but I don't want to do that. I don't want it too blurred out too much. So I'd probably switch over to some other little idea. I don't like that. Maybe if I go smaller, that's a little better. And I'd manage this edge on this mountain because it's getting far away from me, right?
Yes.
Now I'm going to drag this out so I'm not getting all these like, and then I'm going to add this. You know, and then maybe I come in here. Down here, I want to control that, how that meets the ground. And it doesn't usually just, you know, it flows into the ground. I don't like that yet. It's not, oh, that's why. Because it's not, I don't have this on this. Let's just, I'm going to screw this up and I'm just going to put it on the same layer because I didn't think about my layers.
So Mike, like when you did the tree, it looked like you were using the same brush for the most part,
I used
Then
two
you-
different brushes.
2 different brushes.
Yeah.
And then when you switched to the mountains to soften it, what makes your choice?
I have to go in and find ones that work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's just kind of like you have 5 trial and error, and then you look
Yeah,
for
a
the
lot of it
effect.
is, a lot of it is trial and error,
Okay.
you know? And then another, you know, then I might come in here. Hang on. That's too dark. So as you get back into the atmosphere, what happens is now, you know, I might have to switch brushes here. So I want to start indicating maybe some shadows on that mountain. And what happens as you go back in space is, that's a little nicer, is the values get closer together. So we're starting to get a little bit of a mountain back there now. Oops. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm going to pull these down. Like this little thing right here would be a ledge dropping off. Same thing here. I'm losing that a little bit. That's okay. This would drop off this way. This would drop off probably that way. And I can start to build just enough back there to make it interesting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And this is just my starting point, okay? And then I could come in here. I don't know. Maybe I could come in here and go, I don't know if I can get this to work. Actually, let's do this. What am I on? Oh, I'm on a smudge. Hang on.
So it sounds like we're going to be transitioning away from doing like photo manipulation
Yes.
to digital painting.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
what I want to
Cool.
say is it's
Right on.
like brushes, and I'm not, this isn't a digital painting class. But what I have to do is set you up, to me, I have to set you up for a digital painting class.
I dig it. I'm
Got
for
it.
it.
Does that make sense?
Sure
Yeah.
does.
You know, and I could start to indicate maybe there's some snow back there left over. It's summer, it's fading off, blah, blah, blah. And then I build this up, okay? And I build everything up. And I'd have to build, especially, I never do this, but I might screw it all up now. I want to be able to blend this edge a little more naturally and maybe pull it up into the mountain a little bit. Because it's far away. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
see the defined, like where the ground plane meets the mountain.
Yeah, and I might go back and forth and pull this down. And then I'm also going to pull some of my cool into that background. Okay, and then I'm going to start going. And then I'm going, okay, this tree in the foreground, let's see if we can do this. I want to combine these again. I would never do that, but I'm just going to do it for the sake of this. And I might go, well, maybe this needs to get a little darker. Yeah, more like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that way you separate the
Yeah.
foreground and the background a little
Boom,
bit
pulls
better.
it forward, right? Now, don't do what everybody in entertainment does where they do this. Which
All right.
another thing I'm sick of seeing. Okay. It's like, really? You ever seen that in nature? Because I never have. Okay. And then they go to this, goes to a 30, and then, or it goes to, yeah, like a 30, and this back here goes to a 20 or whatever. Okay. You got to look at these things. Okay. Look at fucking nature. Okay. Now let's go. You know, and I'm gonna always be going back and forth and fiddling with some of this. But another thing, what I want you to get to with like things like bark, I had a lot of trouble with this when I was first learning, because I'm like, how the fuck do you draw bark or like paint it or whatever, or ground texture? Because you look at ground texture and you go, there's nothing there. You know what I mean? You're just going, there's nothing there. What the hell am I painting? You know. And then you start to go back here, maybe with another brush. Well, let's see if we can do it with a smaller version of this brush. And I'd have to start going, maybe there's something lighter. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go over it so I can change it. And you're going to start to get things. I'm going to start getting grids back here. And the reason I'm doing it with this brush is that it starts to indicate things getting lit a little bit, especially evening. If we make this more evening, let's go. Get a little darker. So we're getting a little darker, a little later in the evening, okay? It also might start to shift color a little bit. I'm just seeing if I can find anything I like. Maybe it does that, but then here, let's go another layer. Then I'm going to just dirty up that horizon a little bit. Oops, not enough. It's too neutral. So let's go a little orangey. And again, I can just dial this in. Okay, too saturated. Because what it does is it gets a little dirty towards that horizon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's enough for now, okay? But if I start to, you know, make it a little later, then these start to feel like a little bit of light back there dancing around. Now, the other thing with that is then you got to go, okay, well, there's also going to be, oops, no, there we go. There's my light layer. There it is. I don't like that. That's a little too blue. So I'm going to go, let's push it a little. You'll get a couple of different variations down there. Come on. There it goes. Oops, way too saturated. I'm going to go back to this for now. You know, and then there's going to be some roads back there. And I know I'm just half-assing it, but, and then I might go, well, let's go, there's going to be some spots here where it's brighter. And then we go a little wider. Yeah. And how I usually do this, there we go. That's okay. And then I'd have to get some that are a little bit, there has to be a variation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw this down. It's not going to be right. So I'm putting it on its own layer. I'm just going to dial it in. And I'm going to go, it's probably just going to desaturate a little bit. Yeah, it's not too bad. So what you'll see are variations of warm and cool, okay? Then I'd have to make sure that I'm not just repeating my patterns here again, right? So I'll do a couple of things. I'll mess this up a little bit, knock some of it out. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer again. I don't want to lose that one. I like that one. I like this little cluster. So a little cluster could be anything. It could be a little industrial area, who knows what, right? There could be some things against this hillside back here, like structures or something. You know, it could be some, that's too big, but I can change it. It's fine. Start to indicate some things back there and then go, I think it's too dark. And I'll come back here and maybe mess it up a little. And then what else? I might vary the bottom here, might get a little darker. I might pull a dark onto this mountain a little bit and then let it cool up as it goes up. Okay. So get a little of this dirtiness, a little pulled up into there a little bit. Might come in here and start to go, that's too saturated, that blue. I don't like that.
You know, Mike, on the brushes we just made with all the directional changing and stuff.
Yeah.
Like for fur, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm watching your brushstroke here. It doesn't have that directional thing as much.
No, I don't need it here.
Yeah. Okay.
What I need here is different types of textures, just like this back here where I'm doing that. So now if I come up here and I go, well, I'm going to grab my normal brush and I'm just going to go, I'm going to go lighter. Because okay, so now I've set up some texture and some ideas. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But now I can come in here and start to dance over that. Oops, I think I'm on the wrong layer again. Hang on. That's weird. Hang on. Oh, my stupid, I got to calibrate my Wacom again. I blame you for this, Casey. Okay, so I'd come down here now with a regular brush and I'd probably hit a few. I got to get above all this stuff here. And I'd hit a few of these little spots. I might even go almost white. Come on. And I'd start to light a few of these little clusters up. Maybe there's a few things out here. Might put in a road or two. But we're starting to get, what happened here? We're starting to get a scene a little bit. Does that make sense? This line right here is because of my stupid Wacom. Okay, so anyway, so we go there. Then I might come back here and go, well, I think the mountain, it's going to darken everything, which I don't want. That's why you shouldn't flatten things. If I go a little darker, now I'm starting to get a little more of a night scene. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then I'd have to go, another thing I'd have to do is go up here. One more thing, and then I'll shut up. Maybe get a, and again, I can dial this in. So it really doesn't matter. I'm going to pull a green in here. And I'll dial it in. If I'm going to block in something like these leaves, I'm probably going to go. And sort of start blocking it in with some sort of just really nice textury brush. And again, I'd have to dial it in just right. For now, that's fine. And then that's going to also cover up some of this tree, which is nice because I don't want it all. And then I might come in here again. Did I put that on so there? Yeah. Again, I'm going to mix up these edges. I don't like that exactly, but yeah, I just want something to get the point across. Let's go here. I don't like that one. Let's go. I don't know what this one even does. Let's try it. I don't like that. Hang on. I know which one I'm probably going to have to use. And I'd start to dial these in. And then I'd come in here after the fact and go, either I'd have a leaf brush or I just use, I usually tend to use, because I like to think of this as sort of like using a, what do you call it? Oh, I'm on a smudge, sorry. Is sort of like using a palette knife or something. Hang on. Let's try this one. you know, and I can start to indicate a few leaves out here away from that and start to build the idea. And I'd have to vary the color too, by the way. I'd have to come in here and go, well, maybe it goes a little more warm in some places. Come on. I can maybe dance a little of that warmth in there, and even some brighter lit ones here and there. Maybe a little of that. That's too much, but I can knock it down. Because sometimes I like to use the smudge brush to mix it together with the other stuff. That's too soft, so I'd fix that, okay? And then I might come back in here with a little bit of darkness on this branch. And I'd start building values here. This is going to be canopied, so this is going to get a little bit of value, like darker value up here as it goes up, because the canopy is going to, what do you call it, knocking into shadow. Okay. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
And we're just starting to build a scene. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is what did all the work,
The brushes.
Brushes.
right? And again, what happens is people come in and they go, oh, what do you call it? Let's go back to a regular brush. And they go, you know, and they start going, I'm going to draw all the bark in, and that doesn't work. Okay. Now you can sort of, because there's trees up here that sort of do have a linear pattern in them, but I might just, I'm probably going to paint the shapes on top of a dark value. Or if I start building in the sort of linear pattern of the bark, then I'm going to have to come in and go, maybe I'll just sort of, I'm not going to show it everywhere, number one, but then I'm going to come back in with a rougher brush. Let's try this one and get that color around it. That little green hint right there is kind of nice. I'm going to use that and start to obliterate some of it and shape it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, because I could get a few linear things in here, but I'd have to, A, I don't want to do a lot of it, and B, you know, I don't want it to become a drawing. I want this to be a painting, okay? I'd have to redo this a little bit. By the way, here's another thing you could do here. Like on this layer where we have the tree, I could do the thing where we do right here and go lock transparent pixels. And then if I want to, you know, paint in this, it's not going to go outside of that tree. It's just going to lock the pixels off. Okay. And it's also nice if I want to come in here and smudge, so it doesn't smudge outside of my selection. Yeah. Okay. So there's that. And then that would just be the basic start. Okay. I wouldn't want it just sort of with nothing going down. You know, I probably want to see the ground. I probably would have put the ground in there originally and had the tree coming out of that or whatever, right? Or maybe take the tree or take some of this maybe. Put it behind. Pull some of this up. And I could erase out a bunch of this crap. Oops. And start to use this down here to sort of create some ground cover. I'd have to dial it in. And start to use that as a starting point to start creating the ground part. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, well, we got to be careful. Like, I don't like this soft edge here. I don't like that soft edge. Okay. I'd have to make sure that I don't have just a bunch of soft edges around here. So that'd be easy to fix. I could just come in here with a textured brush. Oops, that's a little too much, obviously, but I'm just going to leave it for now. You know, and make sure that I'm controlling that edge a little bit. I don't like that mark right there. It's too soft. You know, and I'd come in here and I'd shape that out a little bit. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so basically tomorrow, we're going to go over a different scene. Okay. So I'd have to dial that green in. It's not right yet at all. Oh,
So focus on just making those brushes then.
Yeah, I just want you to get the directional part, the scatter part, the transfer part. If you want to put in that little bit of color dynamics in there to shift it up, just try a bunch of different things. I don't really need anything representational. I just want to make sure you understand that basic brush building technique, okay? Because that's what's creating all this, okay?
Right on.
It's a little bit of like brushes I have, and then you can make, you know, whatever. If I didn't have these brushes, I would just go make them, okay? Anyway.
Excuse me, Mike.
Yeah.
Do you recommend I start off with a soft round, because you told me to start it from scratch? This is Julio.
Yeah.
So I'll start off with a soft round and go from there.
I would do what I said earlier, where you're sort of doing
I'll watch the video. I'll watch the
line thing, and the reason I say that is that you can really see that the direction is working. If
very
you
well.
It's super abstract right off the bat, it's not necessarily all that directional. It still is, but not the same way. Okay. I start with like one line, and then that's how I build those text or fur brushes. Okay. And then once you kind of understand that, it's like, oh, I get it.
Okay.
The directional thing is in the middle. It's the middle drop down in under. I have it in the video. It's in the video.
I'll check it out.
But anyway, that's what'll start to make it directional. And then once you get that, go, okay, now I'm gonna try this shape and this shape and this shape, and just try whatever you want. Okay. It's really, this is 100% you have to go through this part with brush creation. If you don't just abstractly play with these things, if you're going right in and going, I want to make a brush like all those Aaron Blaze brushes, it's probably not going to happen. You got to play with these a little bit and then start to apply them. And then you'll start to understand how to fine tune them in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Under our time a little bit. All right. All right, you guys. I'll see you in the morning then. Wait, let me.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, you guys.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
See you in the morning.